This is exactly what you want to see, as Ryan Warsofsky has done a masterful job as Macklin Celebrini and Will Smith's success. It comes down to one key component right now that the Sharks are perfecting, and it involves some of the veterans like Tyler Toffoli and Mikael Granlund, who is now a member of the Stars. But we have to dive into the unbelievable success and the key that the Sharks are doing that not many rebuilding teams have done that is helping lead them to a brighter future. We got a bunch of stuff to get into on this episode of Sharks Digest. But before we get into the video, guys, we are just over 100 subscribers away from 1,000. That's a huge landmark for us, and still a bunch of you watching this video are not subscribed. It's completely free, and we have all the latest daily news, rumors, reports for the San Jose Sharks. If that sounds good to you, hit the button down below. Let's get right into this, Mark, and we got to talk about some success the Sharks are having. Now, this comes from an article that we will link down below, and it's very interesting, but it talks about how the San Jose Sharks are able to give their young guys veterans to play with and how it's helping them. Here they say Smith and Celebrini are logging more minutes on the ice. This throws them into more high-pressure opportunities to learn and grow. The experience they are gaining and the situations they get thrown in will push them to get better and stronger. And that really has been the case. They've been able to get a bunch of minutes now, with Celebrini being officially on the top line with Granlund gone. But a big thing here is the people that they have been able to play alongside, because a lot of rebuilding teams, Mark, like, they don't have the chance to play with guys like Toffoli or even a great scoring player like Mikael Granlund. And right now, the ability for Celebrini to play with Toffoli or even Smith for that brief time with a guy like Granlund is paying dividends, and it's allowing them to really develop in these high-pressure situations while still being competitive.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the lineup, the biggest thing is we knew Celebrini can take the load on that top line. As a number one center, I mean, we've seen him join this team and immediately be dominant, coming back from injury and looking like a vet already at the age of 18, which is just insane to even think about. Looking at Celebrini, I wasn't worried about him getting into the top line without maybe having the best supporting cast. But having someone like Will Smith getting time at that center position, getting to grow as a center, we're going to see it rotate a bit, but him being on the second line, still having vets around him, I think it's going to really help with his development. As I said, Celebrini is going to be a star at the end of the day, but the biggest thing that Mike Grier did with this team, just kind of building this team with the young stars, with some vets. I'm not trying to pick on the Chicago Blackhawks at all, but looking at what Mike Grier did with the team, he added players to the lineup like Tyler Toffoli. We've seen Granlund join this team. There's a lot of guys that have experience, and when you look at Chicago, they're trying to do the same with lesser talent in guys like Nick Foligno, Ilya Mikheyev, and that's not ripping on these guys. They had Tyler Toffoli there, but I think Mike Grier has done an awesome job. And Josh, just looking at this, do you think maybe in the long run this is going to really benefit them? Or do you think they might just kind of look at this and say, hey, we'll give them the number one roles right now, but maybe vets could take the spot towards the end of the season?
I mean, I think this is part of the plan, and I think this is going to pay big dividends. And again, like, when you are trying to build your roster for the future, there's always a bunch of considerations you have to make, and it's never easy, right? I mean, as teams go through rebuilds, they have young guys playing a bunch together where they have really bad plus minus stats. I mean, even look back to last year when Granlund was even playing with the Lund line or whatever they had, right? The plus minuses weren't great. But right now, this year, they've been doing really good things with that combination of young and veteran talent. Again, like, Celebrini playing with Toffoli is, fairly, I mean, like, they've been rolling together all season, but we've also seen Granlund with Toffoli at times as well. But the big thing, that Lund line, Zetterlund and Eklund, younger guys, of course, Eklund being younger than Zetterlund, and Granlund playing a lot of time together. Now, their expected goals percentage is not great, but they were the most used San Jose Sharks line, and doing this really will pay dividends for the future, I believe. And I want to hear what you guys have to say down below as well, because we're already seeing this pay dividends with Celebrini. But if we go back to that article, that thing you flashed up for a sec, I want to take a little bit of a deeper dive on this as well, just to read some of the bigger implications, right? Pairing the two rookies with the veteran players has drastically improved their performance, right? Celebrini starting his second game on the top line alongside Eklund and Toffoli, which we just mentioned. Both players have had a large impact on Macklin's game. When the three are lined up together, their chemistry leads to amazing plays and goals scored. Smith set to be paired with Zetterlund and Podorowski for the game against Vancouver. Smith has experience playing alongside Zetterlund, but was also being mentored by Granlund, and Podorowski is a new addition. But that's the thing, like, it's not just these advanced stats, it's the eye test as well. You can see a guy like Celebrini when he's playing with a high skill guy like Toffoli, a guy who's played a ton. He's been to the Stanley Cup Finals. I believe he has a cup. I could be wrong with LA, but still, like, these guys who have been around the block and can still be 20, 30 goal scorers, it allows you to play more freely, and it allows you to have a lot less pressure on you to, be absolutely perfect. Will Smith's a young guy who's going to make some mistakes as he's going through his career, but right now he has 23 points in 49 games. And in the games that we have watched him play with a guy like Granlund with higher skill guys, Mark, it's very obvious to me that the game comes more naturally to them a lot faster because they can feel free to maybe do the moves that they have in their head with other guys who can catch up to them and make those high level plays alongside him. So to me, I'm already seeing these dividends paying off.
And I mean, looking at Will Smith, I do want to talk on him for a little bit because I mean, Celebrini, everyone knows what to expect. But looking at Will Smith putting up almost a half a point per game in the NHL in his first season, we've seen Ryan speak out on this. We've seen Mike Grier speak out on this. This was a guy that was used to being the #1 option on Boston College, well, close to it, putting up 71 points in 41 games. He had to take a step back and he's almost overshadowed by someone like Celebrini. But Will Smith is currently sitting, I believe it's 7th right now in the rookie stats for this year in scoring. He's having an underrated year, and in any other year, he could be top 5. I know guys like Lane Hudson, Mitch Kov, Celebrini, these guys are sitting at the top of the list, and Celebrini is going to probably end up winning. But looking at this, he is being overshadowed a bit. I mean, Josh, kind of going back to the lineups for a minute with how they have it, I'm going to kind of throw it back to you. Do you think maybe Mike Grier goes out and says, hey, we want to keep veterans on this team. We moved out guys. We moved out key guys in Granlund and Ceci. Could you see them maybe reaching out to another team at deadline and saying, hey, if you have contracts you don't want, a 1-year deal, maybe a 2-year deal, we'll take them off your hands for cheap. Maybe you grow their value a bit, or maybe you just use these vets for more experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a world where they do it. Now, San Jose is a lot tighter to the cap than I think some people might realize. I mean, of course, there's a lot of retention going on, but the deadline cap space is plenty, right? It's plenty to make a lot of moves. Projected, of course, 7 million, but deadline, look, they'll have the ability to do this. Now, I think you're actually really on to something there because that's something like we've discussed before. And I think a lot of fans, I want to hear your input on this as well. But again, we've seen the success, at least the ability for a guy like Will Smith or Celebrini to grow and how much better they've looked on the ice when you're watching them with these veteran guys. There's a lot of teams that always have these bad contracts, these anchors of contracts, and they're trying to get off of them, right? And if they have picks, sometimes they'll attach them and send them to a rebuilding team or a team with a bunch of cap space in order to just get off this contract and not worry so they can continue to build their contender. But a lot of times these players are not necessarily bad players. They're just not worth their contract. So I actually really think this is the perfect position for the Sharks to go out and do something like that. Now, again, whether it's the deadline or this offseason, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I expect San Jose to actually be super, super active at this deadline and searching for these guys. But being that kind of third party to say, hey, I can handle something for you. Now, retention, not really an option. However, like taking on a bad contract, it might work if the player is good enough. Now, again, the last thing you want to do is block some young guys in, but I mean, there's some guys in this lineup that, like, if you bring in another guy, you might be okay sending one of the guys you see here out of the lineup every now and then. Look, I'm not going to speak for Ryan Warsofsky's lines, but what I am saying is heading into this deadline and especially this offseason, I would expect the Sharks to kind of make some kind of move again to keep that talent level at least where it is for now and maybe even bring in a couple of other guys, depth guys who can impact even that depth scoring for these other younger guys that are playing maybe in the bottom 6 even more.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing, and I kind of like going back to it, looking at that top defensive pairing, I know it's not the best in the NHL, but Wallman was a guy that Mike Grier went out, got a second or a third round of pick attached to him to take on this contract. He's currently went out to be one of the best defensemen on this team when it comes to the offensive game. I could see them doing this as well. Listen, you go out, you pick up a 1 or 2 year contract. As you said, a retention is not possible right now. Brent Burns is up at the end of the season, so they will have that open retention spot. But I could see Mike Grier wanting to get crafty with this. I know he said they're not going to move out players just for the sake of getting more draft capital. But if you can bring in players and add draft capital, I think it's almost a no-brainer. You can't start a full team of rookies. It's not going to work out. Adding these depth guys, adding guys that maybe you get on a 2-year deal, you eat the salary this year, retain half next year, get another second, add someone else. I think it's going to be sneakily underrated on what the Sharks can do this offseason, Josh.
Yep, I think so. I think we're in for something really, really interesting. Now, this is the most fun time of the rebuild. As much as it sucks to see losses, it's always fun to see your players develop, and that's exactly what they're doing with these veteran line mates they have right now. And it's the exact position that we're in for in the next coming 1, 2, 3 seasons as this team starts to build up the roster. We start to see the young guys getting better. Want to hear all your guys' thoughts down below. Will they be active? Are they going to go look for some other veterans who can score to keep these young guys, like, their pace up, their development even better? There's a lot of fun stuff coming for sure, but that'll do it for this episode of Sharks Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. It's completely free, like I said, and we got all the latest news, rumors, reports right here. This is your home for it. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host, Mark Pye. We'll catch you in the next one.